So, to continue talking about digital consoles and their use in high school and college theater and even professional theater, let's talk about automation and let's talk about what it can and can't do for you. Now, when you have a theater production, ideally the sound engineer knows all the dialogue, knows all the cues, knows all the ins and outs, and therefore they can turn on the correct microphones at the correct time and leave all of the other microphones muted. And the reason for that is a little thing called the 1-to-3 rule, which a lot of people don't think applies in theater because what happens is we go to a lot of the venues, we go in and listen to a show, and the show sounds like it's being recorded in a subway tunnel. You're like, okay, so what's going on? And you find out they've got PCC 160 floor mics that are on. You find out they've got overhead hanging mics that are on. Headsets with 12 people on stage that are all on. A few shotguns in front of the stage on stands just for good measure that are all on. And it sounds like a subway tunnel. And as people move around the stage, you hear this thing called comb filtering, which if you haven't heard that yet, we're going to do some demonstrations here. So let me get free of this chair. Let's do that. Get rid of the chair. Going to bring in a few other sources. Now, due to COVID, and a lot of my COVID buddies, I call them COVID buddies because they're people who won't go out of their houses. They won't come over and help. So I can't simulate everything I'd like to. So I can't get like 3 or 4 other people with headsets. So what we're going to do is we're going to do some other things here. So I got 2 other microphones here and another one back there, which are going to be like I had 3 more actors on stage. And then what we're going to do is we're going to simulate a number of ways of dealing with this. So first of all, if you're an engineer for a show, you should learn the show. But let's just say you don't have time. You know, it's a lot of these shows, they throw tech rehearsal in at the tail end and they go, oh, you'll figure it all out. So let's talk about what happens when you start turning on other microphones in the room that are not the one that you're primarily using. Let me turn that guy off because that shouldn't really be on. That was leaving on another mic that I shouldn't have done. And I'm going to go in here, turn off the gate on my microphone. So I got 3 live mics here in the room, and I have them almost 1-to-3 distanced. Now, for those of you who don't know what that is, in the comb filtering world, if I'm working a foot away from this mic, the next nearest mic should be 3 feet away. Now you notice with my headset, that's not working because my headset is on my head. And then back here, we got this other guy back here. So there's, once again, a fairly good distance. Let's just say these actors get a little closer together than they should. And this one comes over. And now what ends up happening is the sound of my voice is getting into multiple microphones. And in a perfect world, if the sound guy knew what he was doing, he would go, oh, I don't need these microphones. I'll just turn on the one the guy's using. But if you don't know the show or you have other problems, you end up with situations like this where all these mics are active. Now, if I get really close to just one mic, it'll tend to take precedence, but the other ones still pick up things. Sorry I couldn't save you from that cough, but we'll let that go. So what do you do if you have this situation is you can create a couple of different ways of dealing with this where I don't really need to know the show as well, but I can get rid of this sounding, this kind of comb filtering. So let's go into a gated mode. So what this has just done, and I got to get it, there we go, it just woke up. So what we've just done here is we've created a situation. Now these mics are too close together and I think the gain structure is off from the last preset. So now I've got my headset on, and when I'm far enough away from these other actors, their mics are turning off. Now if you have never used noise gates, looking at these channels, these little red bars down here let you know the noise gate's active. Noise gates are devices that turn channels on and off based on level. Now, in creating a gated-only show where I'm waiting for the gate, so it's like if I come over here to this mic, right now I've only got 2 mics interacting instead of 4. And same thing here. I go over here, or I go over here. The gates are keeping off the channels that I don't want active. How successful that is dependent on how carefully you set your gates. It's also important when you do set a gate, let's go back up to this screen, that you set the envelope of how long it's staying on, how long it's taking to release, to make it relatively natural, so it sounds like somebody pulling down a fader, not like somebody just muting the channel. So this is one option, and I've done shows with up to 16 wirelesses on stage where the actors will come up at each other and my voice would activate someone else's wireless and create comb filtering, but the gates would prevent that from happening. It also helps if you don't know all the dialogue in the show to make sure that mics turn on when somebody's talking and the majority of them stay off if people are far enough apart. So let's talk about another option. This one is auto mixing. So in this mode, we're using a gain sharing auto mixer. So the 4 channels that are open are all open. But with a gain sharing auto mixer, it tends to minimize the comb filtering by the way it selects which mic has got precedence. So it shares the gain amongst all of them. But the one thing you'll notice, if you listen carefully, is there's a lot more background noise because in this case, all 4 microphones are on to some degree. So you have more electronic background noise, which is summation noise between the channels. But there's a way to solve that. You can go back into these and you can say, let's turn on the noise gates with the auto mixer. So now I've got a situation where I've got auto mixing whenever I activate multiple microphones by getting too close to them. But the noise gates get rid of the imminent background noise that happens when you leave all these microphones active all the time. So if you carefully use auto mix algorithms in your console, which this particular one, it has the ability to have multiple auto mix groupings. It's got a lot of capabilities. Not every console has this, but a lot of them do. So you can go in and create a show where you can have a lot of mics on stage, not necessarily know the show that well, and not end up with that situation where a mic doesn't turn on when it needs to, or multiple mics are constantly phasing with each other, making your show sound hollow and distant. So that's just one grouping of options for theater production. And as with all of these things, this requires careful setting of the microphones and the gates and gain structures based on the actors themselves. But if you start with those libraries where you bring up individual microphones to levels that are known in a room that are EQ'd for the room, you got a good starting point and you should have a successful show with a minimum of effort compared to reading a script and trying to find all the channels when you don't really remember the script.